The docking bay of the Galactic Tribunal's central station glowed with an indifferent blue, its sterile lights reflecting off polished obsidian floors. Ships from 100 worlds had arrived. Ornate, spiked vessels of the Warlords species loomed beside sleek Terran transports and coral-shaped crafts of the Cephalari. But all eyes turned when a modest black shuttle hummed quietly to a stop. It was unarmed. No honor guard. No delegation. Only one man emerged. Ambassador Elias Kale stepped down the ramp in a dark, high-collared suit. No medals, no flair, just a single silver wrist case chained to his right hand and a posture too composed to be casual. His boots echoed with every step. A flick of his eyes surveyed the crowd, cold, clinical. No nods. No greetings. He wasn't here for theater. That him? A snide voice hissed. The speaker, a Zarkith war officer, wore ritual bone armor. His tusks twitched in amusement. Kale paused mid-stride. His head turned slightly toward the voice, but he said nothing. Just resumed walking. Cuthuan, supreme warlord of Zarkith, watched from above, perched like a vulture on the tribunal balcony. His broad shoulders were draped in the red pelt of a skinned Varadi tiger, an intentional insult to the Varadi delegation seated 2 rows below. His yellow eyes narrowed as Kale reached the central platform. Earth sends a clerk? Cuthuan's voice boomed across the hall, artificially amplified. No soldiers left? Or is this the new breed, paper and posturing? Kale stepped onto the dais with the same calm stride, brushing past layered species, towering guards, and coiling tentacles without a blink. He stopped before the council core, an obsidian ring where only the highest representatives spoke. He placed his wrist case beside the mic. I was told we were here to prevent war, he said evenly. Not rehearse it. Several members of the council chuckled. The Zarkith snarled. Chancellor Yo, a translucent being of light from the Ithran Collective, gestured for silence. Let us remember the purpose of this summit. The Jorix Accords demand we resolve hostilities through dialogue. Cuthuan scoffed. Dialogue implies 2 equals. Earth is a violent dog that should be kept leash, not seated beside its betters. Kale didn't flinch. He unclasped the case and removed a small holoslab, placing it in front of him. With a wave, the summit's negotiation topics appeared: trade access, border reallocation, military withdrawal zones. I'll speak only once on each point, Kale said, eyes fixed on no one and everyone at once. Earth isn't interested in ceremony. Only fairness. Whispers rippled around the chamber. The bluntness, arrogant to some, admirable to others, marked a shift from Earth's past ambassadors, who cowered under Zarkith's shadow. But this one didn't bow. He barely blinked. From the corner, Admiral Tara of the Cephalari leaned to her assistant. That's the one, isn't it? From the wastes of Draconis? Confirmed, her aide whispered. Codename, Executioner. Files classified. Kale lifted his gaze subtly toward Cuthuan. I suggest we move to the trade terms. Cuthuan leaned forward, voice like gravel dipped in venom. Do you know how many of my sons died in your fair battles, human? Kale didn't answer. I remember your kind screams, the warlord continued. But I don't remember faces. You all look the same, burnt, broken. Now Kale looked up. Just for a second. No anger. No flinch. Just a stare, quiet, flat, cold. Cuthuan paused mid-smirk, something catching in his throat. We all remember things differently, Kale said. But I assure you, General, no one forgets my face. That silenced the chamber. Even the envoys of Korea, known for their endless whispers, went still. Kale turned back to the council. Let Earth's terms be heard. And let the Zarkith respond with arguments, not ghosts. Later, in the dim corridors beyond the council hall, Kale walked alone. A cluster of delegates followed at a distance, whispering, watching. As he passed a mirror-like panel, his coat shifted from the movement. Just slightly. For a fleeting second, visible only to those watching closely, was the insignia beneath his collar, blood-red triangle over a black skull. Executioner. A murmur traveled behind him. One of the junior envoys stumbled in his step. Cawthon saw it too, from his perch above the corridor. His smirk returned, but now it was tempered. Less sure. Less amused. The human was no clerk. He was a shadow from the war. One with a name Zarketh mother still used to frighten unruly hatchlings. Cale paused by a viewport. Outside, the stars shimmered across the hull of his unarmed shuttle. His reflection caught in the glass. Behind him, footsteps approached. "You made quite the impression," said Chancellor Yull, her luminous form humming softly. "Zarketh expected a lamb." Cale didn't turn. "They always do." She hesitated. "You wear that pin openly?" "No," he replied. "Only when they need reminding." A silence stretched between them. Yull's glow dimmed slightly. "You're not here for diplomacy, are you?" Cale finally turned. "I'm here to prevent the last war from becoming the next." "And if it already has?" Cale glanced back toward the stars. His voice was low. "Then I remind them why peace was their only option." The grand hall of stars shimmered under artificial auroras, refracted light flowing across crystalline walls like captured fire. Beneath the spectacle, rows of delegates dined beneath hanging gardens and floating chandeliers, an extravagant effort to mask the tension choking the room. The banquet wasn't a celebration. It was a show of power, diplomacy lacquered over resentment. And at the center, seated exactly where the galaxy could stare, sat Elias Cale. He hadn't changed clothes. The same dark suit. Same posture. Same unreadable calm. He ate slowly, precisely, alone at Earth's assigned table. Cutlery clinked. Murmurs rose. At the table adjacent, Cawthon devoured his plate of seared track meat with theatrical ferocity, tearing the charred flesh with his tusks. Zarketh's soldiers laughed around him, slapping armored shoulders, speaking in their guttural tongue. Their leader's eyes never left Cale. Finally, Cawthon leaned back, lips glistening, and raised a bone goblet. "To peace," he said, the words sharpened by mockery. "And to Earth's finest diplomats." His entourage burst into forced laughter. Cale raised his own glass of clear Terran water. "To survival," he said. The laughter faltered. A pale-skinned Norathi delegate turned slightly in her chair, whispering to her neighbor. "Did you hear his intonation? That was no toast. That was a warning." Cawthon pushed back his chair, heavy armor groaning. He approached Cale's table, goblet still in hand. "You know," he said, standing just over Cale's shoulder, "I once watched a human diplomat soil himself when our war drums played during treaty talks." Cale didn't rise. "Diplomacy is full of discomfort." Cawthon chuckled. "Not you, though. You sit like a predator. That's how I was trained." The Zarketha's amusement froze for a moment, a flicker of calculation crossing his face. "Trained by whom?" Cale finally looked up. "You wouldn't recognize the names. They didn't survive long enough to earn fame." A low growl rippled through the Zarketh guards nearby. Cawthon silenced them with a wave. "I've fought humans," he said. "They panic easily. Scream when cornered. Break quickly. You're different." Cale folded his napkin. "Not different. Just not afraid of you." Cawthon's smile returned, but thinner this time. "We'll see how long that lasts." He turned, returning to his table. But Cale's voice followed him, low, deliberate. 3 Zarketh warships. Unarmed freighter. Draconis wastes." Cawthon paused mid-step. Cale continued, his voice still calm. "All hands lost. No debris. No black box. No survivors." The hall fell silent. Even the music faded. Cawthon turned back, eyes narrowing. "That was years ago. No witnesses." "There was one," Cale said, setting his glass down. "The man who ordered the assault. And the man who answered it. The executioner." The word wasn't spoken aloud, but it hung there, like ash from a distant fire. Cale stood and adjusted his coat. As he moved, the fabric pulled just enough to reveal a glimpse beneath the lapel. A red triangle. A black skull. The insignia was visible for less than a second. But for those who'd seen war, it was enough. Cawthorne's smug mask cracked, just for a breath. Then it returned, polished by effort. But something in his eyes had shifted. Recognition. Memory. Dread. Cale didn't press the moment. He nodded to the Chancellor, and began walking toward the observation terrace. Behind him, whispers erupted like sparks. Is it him? Still alive? Earth sent a weapon wearing a tie. Cale reached the terrace and leaned on the railing, watching the stars drift beyond the transparent dome. The silence out there soothed him more than any speech ever had. Footsteps approached. Admiral Tara, the Cephalari envoy, slithered to a stop beside him, her luminous tentacles glowing faintly. Dangerous game, she said softly. Flashing that pin. I didn't flash it, Cale replied. My coat moved. She gave a dry laugh. Intentional or not, you've stirred ghosts. The Zarkith fear symbols. They should fear the memory behind them. She studied him. You killed thousands during the war. Quietly. Efficiently. I read the reports, those not redacted. I did what needed doing. Will you do it again? Cale's eyes remained fixed on the stars. Only if I'm given no choice. Tara tapped the railing lightly. Cawthorne's pride won't let this go. You've become the center of gravity now. Be careful, too much mass collapses into fire. She turned and glided away. Alone again, Cale reached into his coat and slowly unpinned the insignia. He studied it in his palm, small, deceptively simple. It wasn't a badge. It was a history. One soaked in silence and blood. He slipped it back into the inner pocket. Some enemies needed to be reminded. Others needed to remember too late. As the artificial auroras danced above, Cale remained still, a silent silhouette against the galaxy that no longer knew what he truly was, or what he was still capable of becoming. Jorix Station's memorial wing was silent, too silent for a place meant to honor voices lost. Ambassador Elias Cale walked through the corridor alone, boots echoing faintly against black marble tiles etched with thousands of names. Each was a casualty of the human galactic war, engraved without rank or species distinction. Unity through remembrance, the plaque at the entrance had claimed. Cale knew better. Remembrance was selective. He stopped beside a mirrored wall, its surface shifting subtly to reflect not just his face, but fractured images of a battlefield, draconis wastes, replayed in ghostly flashes. Plasma strikes. Exploding hulls. Twisting wreckage and the crackle of a severed comm line. A soft mechanical voice spoke above the memory. Archived battle footage, Operation Silence. Clearance open. Cale didn't request the playback, but the system recognized him. Perhaps too well. He watched the scene unfold again, how 3 Zarkith dreadnoughts had cornered a civilian convoy and opened fire without provocation. How Earth Command had ordered a measured response. And how Elias Cale, field commander of Shadow Division 12, had rewritten that directive. He remembered what the diplomats never discussed. The unarmed human freighter wasn't entirely unarmed. Hidden deep within its engine core had been a grav pulse generator. A last resort? He had activated it personally. The Zarkith ships were obliterated in silence, their hulls crushed by their own momentum before their sensors even detected the spike. No debris. No evidence. Just silence. And no regret. A quiet hiss echoed through the chamber. Someone entered. Cale didn't turn. The footsteps were soft, but deliberate. Old. Some of us have no stones to leave, came the voice, raspy, dignified, tired. No names etched. Only the weight. Cale turned slowly to face the speaker, Elder Varric, once a Zarkith general, now little more than an ambassador in ceremonial armor that hung loosely from his shrinking frame. I remember you, Cale said quietly. Varric nodded. And I you? You were a myth for a long time. Executioner, spoken like a spell among war-born hatchlings. I'm not that man anymore. No. You're something more dangerous now. A man pretending he never was. Kale looked back to the shifting wall. I've never pretended. I've simply moved forward. Varric stepped closer, his breathing heavy. The warlord doesn't care for forward. He feeds on backward. Vengeance is an anchor. And Cawthon's chain is short. Kale met his eyes. He's planning something. Varric gave a shallow nod. An incident. Assassins planted data, a staged betrayal. He intends to provoke war and claim Earth violated the peace accords. Kale's jaw tightened slightly. How soon? Soon enough. The banquet was just theater. The blade comes at the council session tomorrow. Kale's voice dropped. Why warn me? Varric looked around the room. Because peace took more than treaties. It took loss. Real loss. We buried sons, Commander. I buried mine. He died screaming your name. Kale didn't respond. I hated you, Varric said. Still might. But I also respect that you never hid behind a desk until the war was done. And if Cawthon wants to start it again, I'd rather it not be on a lie. Kale stepped toward him, voice steady. I won't let him. Then don't speak tomorrow, Varric warned. Let your silence unnerve him. That's the man we remember. Not the one who lectures. The one who waits. The elder turned and limped away, each step carrying decades of burden. Kale stood in the quiet again, the memory wall flickering off behind him. He stared at his reflection. Still upright. Still composed. But something in the eyes betrayed the weight he carried. He pressed 2 fingers to the lapel of his coat and activated a hidden transmitter. Kale to Earth Command Black, authorization Sigma 75. A pause. Then a crisp voice answered. Go ahead, Ambassador. Situation escalating. Zarkith faction initiating provocation. Prepare fallback op, signal protocol Raven. Confirmed. Do you require immediate extraction? No. I'll handle it. Understood. Kale ended the line. The signal self-erased. He walked to the end of the corridor and entered a quiet chamber where a translucent sculpture spun midair, an ever-changing rendering of the casualties by system. Below it, a short inscription in Galactic Common. Let this place hold the names of those who can no longer speak. Let the living remember what silence costs. Kale looked up at the sculpture. Silence had a cost. And he'd paid it in full. But he was willing to pay again, if provoked. His past hadn't died. It was sleeping. And someone was waking it up. The tribunal chamber pulsed with artificial sunlight, mimicking dawn on Earth. Delegates filled the chamber in silence, rows of galactic leaders seated in calculated symmetry. The air felt thinner, as if tension itself had stolen the oxygen. Ambassador Elias Kale entered precisely on time. No briefcase today. No documents. Just him. He walked directly to her seat and sat, hands calmly folded, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. He offered no greetings. The silence that followed was louder than war drums. Across the chamber, Cawthon arrived like a storm in armor. His soldiers fanned out around him, conspicuously armed for a session that forbade weapons. The guards at the door looked the other way. He took his seat slowly, meeting Kale's gaze with something just shy of triumph. The Chancellor initiated the session with formal protocol. Delegates barely listened. Kale said nothing. The floor opened for the Zarkith representative. Cawthon rose. Before we address today's agenda, he began, his voice oily with feigned diplomacy. It is my duty to report an unforgivable breach of peace, committed by the representative of Earth. Gasps, murmurs. Kale didn't blink. Cawthon gestured to his aide, who stepped forward, presenting a floating data sphere. It spun midair, projecting a fabricated video, Kale entering a secure zone, speaking in code to an alleged assassin, the audio distorted but damning. Earth, Cawthon continued, has violated the Jorix Accords. Their diplomat conspired with mercenaries to sabotage this summit. Delegates turned toward Kale. Still, he said nothing. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. Ambassador Kale, do you have a response? Kale stood. No. Gasps again. I don't need to respond to a performance, he said, voice measured. Because the script is old. The acting worse? Cothlin's grin faltered. Kale walked to the center of the room. The executioner pin was still hidden, but the weight of it pressed through the fabric, real enough for those who remembered. I reviewed that footage hours ago, Kale continued, because I received it before Cothlin did. A pause. He touched the calm embedded in his collar. Now. The chamber's lights dimmed as a new hologram appeared, broadcast to every display. It showed a surveillance feed Kale's security team had decrypted and verified. Zarka soldiers planting the forged data. One speaking clearly to Cothlin's aide. Real-time location data. Timestamped. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Cothlin, Kale said, turning, attempted to start a war based on a lie. He broke the accords. He dishonored this chamber. And he used my silence to build suspense. Cothlin stood, face darkening. You think this performance clears you, human? Your tricks mean nothing. No trick, Kale said. Cothlin stepped forward, snapping a command. 3 armored soldiers rushed Kale from behind. Wrong move. Kale's coat dropped. The pin became visible. The executioner stood revealed. The chamber froze. Kale turned into the first soldier's momentum, grabbed his forearm, twisted, and snapped the elbow without effort. He pivoted, driving a heel into the second's chest, sending him crashing into the marble column behind. The third raised a blade. Kale stepped aside, hooked the arm, and dropped him face first with a short, silent move. All 3 were down in less than 5 seconds. He straightened his collar. No blood. No excess. Just silence. Are we done with the theatrics? He asked. No one moved. The Chancellor's voice returned steely. Ambassador Kale, you have neutralized armed assailants within this chamber. Do you request formal charges? Kale looked to Cothlin. No. I request formal truth. He walked toward the Zarkith general, unarmed, alone. I want you to explain to this council, he said, why a man who lost his war would rather repeat it than live in peace. Cothlin snarled. Because I remember the screams. The burning ships. The silence. I remember what your kind did to my fleet. I remember what your fleet did to unarmed freighters, Kale answered. The tension snapped. Cothlin lunged, claws extended. Kale didn't move. As Cothlin's claws came within striking distance, a force field activated, repelling him backward in a surge of plasma light. The tribunal guards finally intervened. The Chancellor's voice thundered. General Cothlin, by unanimous decision of the High Council, you are under arrest for inciting war under false pretenses. Kale stepped back as the warlord was bound in molecular cuffs, dragged screaming from the chamber. You'll regret this, Kale. They'll fear you again. Kale didn't respond. Fear was a weapon. He only used it when peace failed. Later, in the council's private chambers, Chancellor Yull approached Kale as he stared out at the void. You could have killed him. I didn't need to. Some believe you staged it all. Kale turned. Then they weren't paying attention. She nodded slowly. The galaxy just saw the executioner walk calmly into a trap and leave with the truth. That's more powerful than war. I'm not here to be powerful. Then why are you here? Kale looked past her, past the stars. To keep the monsters from coming back. And sometimes, to remind them what they created. The warlord's screams had faded. So had the council's noise. Now the chamber was empty. Elias Kale stood beneath the dim tribunal skylight, watching ships pass in slow procession across the station's atmosphere dome. Some would call it peace, this hushed moment after chaos, but Kale knew better. Peace didn't come from silence. It came from choices. And his had been made. Behind him, the tribunal doors hissed open. You should be proud, Chancellor Yull said, approaching softly. A lie exposed. A war prevented. Even the Cephalari are calling for your commendation. Cale didn't turn. Commendation, he repeated. For what? Resisting a lie? Refusing to be provoked? For being who you are, she said. Even when no one else understands what that means. I don't need medals. She walked beside him, her light dimmed to match the solemn tone. Earth is asking you to stay. The Council too. They want a permanent seat. A voice. They already have a voice, Cale said. Mine was never meant to last. Yul hesitated. And what will you do now? He looked down at his hands, steady, clean, unbloody for once. Disappear. Let them forget me. Let peace be theirs. They won't forget. He finally turned to face her. Good, he said. But they should never look for me again. Yul studied his expression. You wear your silence like armor. I've worn worse. She gave a soft nod, then handed him a small crystal slab, Earth's formal statement of diplomatic withdrawal. He took it without reading. As Yul walked away, her voice lingered. Just know, there are still those who see you not as an executioner, but as the man who stopped a war with his hands tied. Cale didn't respond. That's what he wanted. A truth shaped in silence. In the lower hangar, his shuttle awaited, sleek, unmarked. The last ties to this place already severed. Cale approached it slowly, footsteps quiet. No entourage. No escort. Just a bag slung over one shoulder, and the weight of everything he chose not to carry anymore. At the edge of the hangar, a boy stood behind the railing, barely tall enough to see. An Ithran child, luminous like his people, but duller, dimmed by grief. Cale paused. Lost someone? He asked gently. The boy looked up, startled. My father. He was a delegate. Cale nodded once. I'm sorry. They said the war was over. But he didn't come back. Cale crouched beside him. Sometimes peace doesn't save everyone. It just gives others a chance not to die next. The boy's eyes blinked slowly, processing. Cale reached into his coat and pulled something from the inner pocket, not the insignia, but a plain medallion, old and worn, with a Terran dove etched into one side. This belonged to my brother, Cale said. He believed peace needed defenders more than soldiers. I didn't understand that for a long time. He pressed it into the boy's hand. You'll make better use of it. The boy didn't speak, just stared at him as though trying to understand something larger than himself. Cale stood and walked away without looking back. The shuttle rose without ceremony, slipping into the black between stars. Inside, Cale sat alone in the cabin, no lights save for the faint blue from the console. He unpinned the executioner's insignia for the last time. He turned it over in his fingers, weighing it. The pin no longer felt heavy, but it no longer belonged. He set it in a compartment beneath his seat. Closed the lid. Above him, the stars stretched out, endless, indifferent. He didn't know where he was headed next. Didn't matter. There would always be whispers. Always another fire waiting for oxygen. But as long as he was out there, somewhere in the dark, they would think twice before lighting the match. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.